adventure, both podcast and YouTube. I am your host, Kimberly Ann, also known as KA. This is the first episode in season 2 of the podcast, and it's still episode number 48. This season will focus on van life since that's what I am currently doing. I'll tell you why and how I started, as well as answer all the questions that I've been asked, like where do you poop and how do you shower? And if you followed van life for even half a second, you'll know that these are the most common questions and you'll probably know the answers. Although I will say that where do you poop is different for each person, usually. In each episode, I'm going to do a little bit of a check in. I'll tell you where I'm currently at in the country, what I've seen, and these will be available on my podcast and on YouTube. But if you're watching on YouTube, please know that there will be minimal, maybe none sometimes editing, because that is my least favorite thing to do. I really hate editing. So that's that. And I'll try to keep each episode between 20 and 30 minutes or less. Maybe I'm a talker and it's going to be a challenge for me, but also increase the speed. And then I'll talk really fast and it'll be over sooner and you'll still get all the information. The first episode, this episode will focus on who I am and why I'm doing this, plus my update. So here goes. As previously stated, my name is Kimberly Ann. I am a born and raised Californian. It's true. And I am a happy, proud 55-year-old woman. Now, I had never left California. I have traveled all over the world, but I had never lived anywhere outside of California until 6 months ago when I moved into my van. What happened today is what I'm going to start with because it freaked me out. It freaked me out. I am in, where am I? Charleston. No, yeah, I'm going fast. I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. Yesterday I was in Hilton Head, and the day before I was in Savannah, Georgia. So, which I loved. So I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. It's, on my list. I'm really excited. I've parked a gorgeous area. I'm facing the water and it's just a beautiful, beautiful area where I am next to a park. And so I get out in the morning and I walk the dog. Here's the dog right here. If you can, I'll show you the dog. Sorry for the people on the podcast who cannot see the dog, but I'm walking the dog and walking down the river, or it's not a river, it is the ocean. And I'm walking down the sidewalk and I see a Confederate flag. And I'm like, that's not a Confederate flag. Is that a No, that can't. No, yes. It was a flippin' Confederate flag. And there was like a guy, there were a bunch of, old white men, and one was dressed as Robert E. Lee, and they're screaming about how they're honoring their ancestors. And I was shocked. I was shocked. I was speechless. I was me. And you don't know me, but for people who do know me, I am rarely, if ever, rendered speechless. And I was speechless. And I saw protesters on the other side of the street holding up signs. And so I crossed the street and joined them. And I hung out with them for probably a little over an hour. I talked to them. I talked to people who were passing by. I talked to a bunch of people who are from the South, one woman and her daughter from Georgia, and everyone was shocked. And now I've posted already a little bit of, a little snippet on Instagram and my Facebook, and people responded, my friends in California, well, what do you expect? You're in the South, or, this is how the rest of the country is. And it's not. This is not how the rest of the country is. There are people like that everywhere. all over the US and even in California. My father is one of them. So, and I no longer speak to him because of that. Well, that's just part of the reason. But there are people who are haters and racist, just outright racist and horrible, just in my opinion, horrible people all over, all over the world. But most I from my understanding, most do not gather every single Sunday or one day out of every week to fly their flag, their racist flag. So I was shocked. The police were called, and apparently they did this every Sunday. The police were called. At first, the policeman was on the side of the racists and said that he was going to arrest everybody on the other side or arrest us if we crossed the street. I mean, it was really crazy. And then the protesters called the racists, the cop's superior, and he showed up and made the other cop leave and stood with us and explained whatever the ordinances and laws were surrounding the whole issue. And it had to do with not the ordinances, but their whole reasoning for being out there was 5 years ago was the church shooting where they killed 9 people. A racist man, a white supremacist, killed 9 people, and then so the Confederate flag was removed. I don't know where it was removed from, and this group of people, white nationalists, felt that that was not okay, and so they've been protesting, or whatever you call it, for 5 years every Sunday. Yeah. So anyway, that's my update. So weird. Really weird. I did walk through part of downtown Charleston. I keep getting mixed up with Charlotte, which is totally different. It's also in South Carolina, but different place. Or is it in North Carolina? See, I'm a Californian. I know nothing. And I'm okay. I'm okay actually saying that because all 3 of my followers don't care. So I walked around downtown and I really liked it. It was a little too crowded for me. And so I ended up leaving. I bought these false eyelashes, which are awesome and super hard to see in and wear, but I'm very, very excited about them. And I talked to a bunch of people and got a little bite to eat and walked around for a couple hours. And I'm going to go back out tomorrow when it's less crowded. And then I will report back again. So there we go. That was the update. The van life part. I have been on the road for 6 months straight, and I'm finally getting the hang of it. And I no longer hate it. And that's a pretty big deal. And for anybody who does know me, you'll know that I have hated it every step of the way. And there are a lot of reasons that I've hated it. And should I go into those now or no? I think I will go into those later because right now I'll just focus on the how and why I am here and the fact that I no longer hate it. Well, I won't focus on that, but I will say that. So literally it's taken me 6 months to just get the hang of it, to not, bump my head or constantly, I still bump my head, or misplace items or not understand how everything works or to get comfortable, just the whole thing, just the 6 months it's taken me. And that's, being in here pretty much full time. I was at my sister's house in a separate little in-law apartment for a couple weeks. But other than that, I've been in the van the whole time. And I would think that this is pretty common. So if you're thinking about doing van life, I would think that it's pretty common that it will take a while. I'm sure everybody's different, but I think that you have to ease into it, or not ease into it, but your mind has to ease into it. You jump into it, your mind follows slowly. So how did I get here and why van life at 55 years old? I worked two full-time jobs for 40 years. Now, I didn't work the whole time. I didn't work two full-time jobs, but for some of the time I did, a lot of the time I did actually. And then since 2016, I have worked full-time two jobs. So about I was working like about minimum 60 hours a week, minimum. And I was like on this hamster wheel of hell, I called it. I'm sure everybody else calls it that too. It's not like, yeah, I didn't come up with that. But I was on the hamster wheel of hell. And I was so busy that if a friend wanted to see me, I would look at my calendar and I would say, okay, I can see you on Tuesday, March 23rd at 4 p.m. for an hour. And that's how my life was. And my calendar was just like completely full. It was just full. And yeah, it was bad. It was really, really bad. And I didn't get it. I got it, but I didn't get it. Like I knew, but I couldn't stop. And the more that I did, the more that I had to do. And anyway, it was just never ending. It just kept going and going and going. And my weekends I worked. Yeah, so it was hell. It was really, really bad. I worked to live and I worked to travel and to afford my $10,000 a month overhead. Yes, that was my overhead. Yeah. So that was my business. I had my own businesses, two businesses, and rent for one of them. Uh, One of them was a brick and mortar, and my own rent, California rent, and really expensive. So everything in California is inflated. So, like for example, breakfast for two people without alcohol, um, just like a mom and pop breakfast was $55, and that's in my neighborhood where I lived. And uh dinner for one person was 60, usually about $60. So, and yes, I could totally eat cheaper. I could eat, junk food or fast food, but I am not, maybe I'm a little too bougie for that, but I don't eat that. I eat organic, or I ate organic. Now I eat whatever. Now I don't eat organic, but I did eat organic, and I ate really well. I'm not saying that this is not like sushi. This is just good food. So most of the time I cooked. However, my market that was the closest market to me, and since I worked all the time, I had to do things that were easy and go to the closest market whenever I could, was for 1 week of food, one person, $250. And that was about two grocery bags of food. So you can figure out that that's, why that I, was $10,000 a month overhead. I went to the chiropractor normally, and of course everything, haircut, car wash, everything is inflated. So my car wash, for the cheapest car wash in my area, was $60. And I saw the other day a car wash for $6. And I was like, what? Really? That exists? So, it just gives you a kind of an example of why things were so expensive. Now, I did live in the most expensive area in Northern California. I lived in Marin County, which is like the Bel Air of Northern California. And it is definitely more expensive than anywhere else. And it is also really beautiful with hiking paths and close to the ocean, and just absolutely gorgeous. And the great weather, and I loved it. I loved. I had two trailheads out, one out one side of my, the back of my place, and one the front of my place. So it was gorgeous. It was absolutely gorgeous. Was it worth $10,000 a month overhead and working 60 plus hours a week? No, no, it was not, because I hardly ever got to enjoy it. So there you go. When I started finally earning, because I didn't earn for a while in life, as happens to people, I started finally earning six figures, and I was very excited and proud of myself. And shortly thereafter, um, number 45 changed the taxes, and my tax bracket changed, and the middle class was really burdened with taxes now, so that the rich don't have to pay them. And so I ended up in the 50% tax bracket. And so 50% of my income went to the IRS. And I am not the person who earns under the table and tries to get away with stuff. So I paid 50% of my net, not my gross, my net, to the IRS. And that left me with not a lot. And what I had, I used to travel, but I couldn't ever get a leg up. I couldn't save enough to really do anything. And I think most people are like that, or hand to mouth anyway. I wasn't hand to mouth, but I have been many times in my life. I have been. So I couldn't barely save, and everything I had saved I did spend on travel. Okay, I'm repeating myself. Apologies. And then COVID happened. And when COVID happened, I didn't work for 3 months. And I realized that I could live on a third of what I had been living on if I didn't have this huge overhead, if I didn't go to the chiropractor, if I didn't have to pay my office rent and all my office bills, which were really, really high. And I was like, what? This is really cool. Let's explore this. And I realized that in order to have the life that I wanted, which was this life that I had experienced during the 3 months that I wasn't working, that I would have to leave California, or I would have to move north. That was my first thought. So I was in a relationship, and I was very, very happy and very much in love. And I said to my partner and I did not live together. And I said to them, they were an hour, 40 minutes north of me. And I said to them, I would like to, stop working one of my jobs, my day job, my, my breadwinning job, the one that was earning me so much money. And I was not happy there anymore. I was not happy doing this career anymore. And I said, I would like to stop doing this career and move closer to you. And you are my number one priority. And I want to be close to you. So I am willing to, give up my apartment. I had a really, really nice apartment. I rented, I've never owned, and move close to you. And they freaked out and asked me for a 6-month break until I figured out what I wanted to do with my life. And so I told them to F off. I'm still not over it. Weirdly, that could be a whole nother podcast, but it's been like 19, almost 20 months. So, in June, it'll be 2 years. And I'm still like, my heart is just shattered. And I realize, because I do go to therapy, I realize that it's because this person as presented one way, and they were not that way. They were completely duplicitous, and then they just fully abandoned me. Just full on abandonment. Just kicked me to the curb. And when I went back and tried to be friends with them, because I said I'd like a year no contact, and then I'd like to try to be friends, and they said okay, and they just ghosted me. So, and I realize now that they're just doing that to hurt me, because I hurt them. But it's just mean. It's just mean and hurtful and awful. And yeah. So anyway, moving on. So when I was trying to figure out what to do, I realized that, when I realized I wasn't going to move up north with them or near them, not with them, that my options were a tiny home, which I'd always wanted, been obsessing over tiny homes for years and years and years, a van, an RV, or I prior, when I thought maybe I could move near my now ex-partner, I had looked into buying a property, and I did get approved for a loan. So I had all of these options. I wrote them all down because I'm a planner. So I wrote them down, all these options, and then I went through each one and wrote the pros and cons of each one. And I won't go into all of that because would take another half an hour. But eventually I decided on the van because I thought, well, I can live anywhere in the United States except for California, but I can't go visit all these cool places that I've never been to see where I might want to live. So why don't I choose the van? And then that way I can stealth camp and boondock, which is sleeping, in a residential area, or just sleeping anywhere you don't have to pay for, and go all over the country and see. They had a bunch of places on my list that I was really interested in maybe living, like Savannah, Georgia was on my list, and a few other places. And I thought, well, I might as well go visit these places in the van. And so that's why I chose the van. So yeah, there was something else I was going to mention, but I can't remember what it was. So whatever. So I found my van builders on Craigslist. When I finally made the decision, I looked on Craigslist. I did find used vans that were already converted or were built as camper vans. And I did call about them. All of them went in less than 24 hours. They were sold. I didn't get to go see any of the ones that were already converted, where there were already camper vans, but I did get to test drive ones that were not converted yet. So the Ram ProMaster, the Ford Transit, and so I test drove vans, and I hired my van builders because they were the least expensive that I could find, and they were new, and they were willing to work with me like piecemeal. So at first I thought, well, I'll just get them to do the cabinets, and then I realized that was stupid. But I was like, oh, I can afford that for the cabinets. It just seemed like easier to wrap my head around a smaller amount of money, obviously. So I did hire them, and I signed a contract with them, and I gave them a deposit. And then I was still looking for a van. It took me, let's see, from June to November to find the van. And I'm not a person who usually jumps on things really quickly. I just usually don't. So I test drove and test drove and test drove. And I won't go through the whole story of how I chose this van, because that also is another like half an hour story. But but I'll just say that I ended up with a Nissan NV 2500. Thanks, Vance. And when I found this van, that's also another long story. Somebody had wanted it, and they were about to buy it, or they went in to buy it, and so the guy was going to test drive it, and the guy was like, sorry, it's already been sold. And then 5 hours later, the deal fell through, and so I rushed down to Nissan, test drove it, and bought it. For somebody who doesn't jump at things, that's what I did, because the vans were going in less than 24 hours, and I couldn't keep waiting. So my van builder's like, we're going to start building soon. So that's what happened. I was looking for a van that was tall. That was the number one. And so this van is 6 feet 6'1". A person can stand in here. I'm 5'2", so that works out. And then I was looking for a van that, wait, what was the other thing? Oh, low gas mileage. And this had 19,000 miles. So it is used. It's 2015, but it had 19,000 miles. It has a lot more now. I think 38 now. No, 36, something like that. So 6 months, yes. No, 32. It's got 32 right now. Anyway, so I jumped on it. I bought the van and I worked my butt off at my job, like, and didn't go out and didn't spend any money and started getting rid of things. And I worked my butt off for a year. I did this, I made the decision a little over a year. So it was in June and I didn't leave until the next September. So September 2021, made the decision in June 2020. So I worked, and I had to pay the conversion in cash. There are some van builders that let you finance the conversion and the van, which is cool. My van builders did not, which was great because I'm glad I don't have payments now. But I did have two very high car payments for a year, and that was brutal. It was like rent. It was as much as my rent. So that actually, it was not quite as much as my rent, but almost. So that was not fun. That was bad. And but I did it. And I paid those for a year. And then when I went to sell my car that I had, that I was still paying on, I didn't own it yet. It was selling for more than I bought it for because of the chip shortage. And so I sold it for obviously more than I bought it for, and I was able to pay off the van because my car, I had bought it new and had it for just a couple years, and it was, I mean, it wasn't like high end, it was Subaru. It was a nice car, and then my van was used, and so it totally paid, yeah, it totally paid for the van. So it was awesome. So then I had like a couple months where I sold all the rest of my things that I could sell. I gave away everything that I couldn't sell, and or not everything, most things. And then I had a very small amount that I put in storage, which now seems like too much because it is too much. Even a small amount is too much. And then I jumped in the van and with my pooch and I left. And yeah, I went to Descend on Bend, was my first van gathering, and the first thing I did in my van. I didn't like it, but anyway, I met an amazing person there, and her and I are really, really good friends now, and we've traveled quite a bit together, and that is a different story for a different time. But I will cover all sorts of things in the future. I'd like to talk about community, how to find it, loneliness on the road, and how I'm not exempt from it, and what I have done. And I have a list. It's not in front of me. You'd think that I'd have it in front of me, but no, I do not. So I cannot tell you all of the things that I'm going to talk about, but safety, what I'm doing for Wi-Fi, which was a huge deal, enormous deal. And it took me 5 months, 4 or 5 months to figure out my Wi-Fi. I didn't have any cell service or Wi-Fi for a long time. I didn't have any lights anyway. That's a whole nother story. I've had a lot of things go wrong, but I won't go into that now. So hopefully you'll keep listening, and thank you for being here. I appreciate every single person that's watching this or listening to this. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, follow, like it, and if you can leave a review, a podcast review would be awesome, because then more people will find it, and blah blah blah, you know the drill. So if you want to, and I would love it if you just would follow me on Instagram. Just one thing, follow me on Instagram. And my Instagram is My Unknown Adventure. The podcast is Unknown Adventure, AN. Long story why my Instagram is not. It was, but there's a long story. I had to change it. So anyway, my Instagram is My Unknown Adventure, one more time. And I just appreciate you. And I'm really glad that I'm finally able to do this again. It was a long road. I had to take a hiatus, and I'm really Yeah, it's important. Burnout is a real thing for me, and it's important that I don't burn out. So there you have it. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. And I hope everybody has a great day or morning or night or whatever time it is where you are. Just have a fantastic, fantastic. Bye.